Uh, Silence has a strange power that most people underestimate completely. That is the very first thing that arrived when I tuned into this energy for you today, Virgo. Not words, not a message, the absence of either. And Spirit is showing me that this absence, your quiet, your refusal to chase or explain or perform reassurance for someone who created distance in the first place has become one of the loudest things in this person's life right now. I want to walk you through exactly what your silence is doing, why it has affected this person so profoundly, what specifically is happening in their mind as a result, and what is likely to happen next. Stay with me through this entire reading because there is real depth here, and I do not want to rush past any part of it. This is one of those readings that requires patience to receive fully because the layers build on each other in ways that only become clear once the full picture is laid out in front of you. Let me describe what I felt the moment this energy opened, because the quality of the very first impression always tells me something important. I felt disruption, a specific unsettled quality, like something that used to run smoothly has hit an obstacle it did not anticipate. This is the energy of someone whose expectations were not met, and not in a small way. They expected a particular response from you, whether that was pursuit, explanation, emotional pleading, or simply continued engagement on their terms, and instead they received quiet. That gap between expectation and reality is what is currently disrupting their internal world. I also felt confusion layered right alongside the disruption, genuine confusion, the kind that comes from someone encountering behavior from you that does not fit the pattern they had grown accustomed to. If you have typically been someone who reaches out first, who smooths things over, who maintains connection even when it costs you something, this departure from that pattern is landing with real force. I want to talk about why your silence specifically has this much power, because understanding the mechanism here matters. Silence forces a person to sit with themselves. When you stop providing reassurance, stop explaining your feelings, stop filling the space with words that manage the situation for both of you, the other person is left alone with their own thoughts in a way they likely have not experienced in a while. There is nowhere for them to direct their attention except inward. And for many people, that inward direction is deeply uncomfortable. I am sensing that this person has built a certain identity around how they believed you saw them. Perhaps as someone who held power in the dynamic between you, someone whose actions or words carried more weight than yours, someone who could create distance and still count on you remaining available and responsive. Your silence has directly challenged that identity, and challenges to identity tend to produce significant internal disturbance. I want to go deeper into this idea of identity disruption because I think it explains why this is affecting them so profoundly, rather than simply being a minor inconvenience they can shrug off. Most people construct a kind of internal map of how their relationships function: who responds quickly and who takes time, who initiates contact and who waits, who holds more emotional investment in a given dynamic. This person had a specific map for how things worked between the two of you, and your silence has essentially redrawn that map without their consent or participation. They are now navigating territory that does not match what they expected to find, and that mismatch between expectation and reality is genuinely disorienting on a psychological level. I also want to address something about control here, because I think it is relevant. When someone can predict how another person will respond to their behavior, There is a sense of control embedded in that predictability, even if neither person consciously thinks of it in those terms. Your silence has removed that predictability entirely. This person no longer knows what to expect from you, and that loss of predictability often produces more discomfort than the original situation that caused the distance in the first place. Let me speak to what specifically prompted your silence, because I think the context here adds important depth to this entire reading. I am sensing this was not a sudden, reactive decision on your part. This came after something, whether that was a pattern of behavior that finally became too much to continue accepting, a specific moment of hurt or disrespect, or simply a gradual recognition that your energy was being spent without adequate return. Your silence emerged from genuine internal clarity rather than impulsive emotion. This matters because it means your quiet is not fragile. It is not the kind of silence that breaks easily under pressure, because it is rooted in something real rather than a temporary reaction. I want to address what specifically they cannot believe you did, because Spirit is being clear about this, and I want to honor that clarity. What has genuinely shocked this person is the consistency of your silence. Anyone can go quiet for a day, even a week, in a moment of frustration. What they did not anticipate was you sustaining this, continuing to hold your boundary even as time passed, even as the discomfort of the silence presumably grew on their end. This sustained quality is what has moved their experience from simple confusion into something closer to genuine disbelief. They underestimated your resolve, and now they are confronting the reality that they were wrong about how easily you could be managed back into engagement. Does this feel like it is connecting to your own situation right now, Virgo? Have you been holding silence with someone, and have you sensed, even without direct confirmation, that it has affected them more than you initially expected? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear what specifically resonates with your experience. I want to speak directly to what is happening in this person's mind right now, because the title of this reading specifically mentions their mind being affected, and I want to give that the attention it deserves. There is rumination occurring, repeated circular thinking about the situation between you, replaying specific moments, specific conversations, trying to identify exactly where things shifted and what they could have done differently. This kind of rumination is exhausting, and I am sensing it has been interfering with their ability to focus fully on other areas of their life. Work, other relationships, even simple daily tasks have been affected by how much mental space this situation is currently occupying for them. I am also sensing a particular kind of anxiety building, specifically anxiety related to uncertainty about whether this silence is permanent or temporary. Not knowing tends to be more difficult for the human mind to tolerate than knowing something definitively, even when that definitive answer is painful. Your silence has placed this person in a state of genuine not knowing, and that uncertainty is generating its own distinct discomfort, separate from whatever guilt or regret they may also be feeling about whatever caused this distance originally. I want to describe this anxiety a bit further because I think the texture of it matters. This is not a constant, sharp anxiety that announces itself loudly throughout their day. It is more of a background hum, present in quiet moments, surfacing particularly when they check their phone and find nothing from you, when they consider reaching out and then talk themselves out of it again, when they encounter something in their day that they would normally have shared with you, and remember all over again that the sharing channel between you has gone quiet. I am also sensing physical manifestations of this stress beginning to show up for them. Difficulty sleeping, a kind of restlessness that does not have an obvious cause until they trace it back to thoughts about this situation, perhaps even some irritability bleeding into other areas of their life that have nothing directly to do with you. The mind and body are deeply connected, and sustained psychological discomfort like this rarely stays contained purely to thoughts. It tends to express itself physically as well, even in small, easily overlooked ways. I want to talk about something deeper here, which is what this experience might actually be teaching this person, even though the process is uncomfortable for them. Sometimes people need to experience the absence of something before they fully understand its value. I am sensing that your consistent presence prior to this silence had perhaps become something this person took for granted, not necessarily through malice, but simply through the natural human tendency to assume stable things will remain stable indefinitely without requiring ongoing effort or appreciation. Your silence is interrupting that assumption in a way that words alone likely could not have achieved. I want to be careful here not to suggest that your silence is simply a manipulation tactic designed to produce this effect. What I am sensing is that your silence emerged from genuine self-respect and genuine need for space, and the fact that it is also teaching this person something significant is almost a secondary consequence rather than your primary intention. This distinction matters because it means your silence remains authentic to your own needs rather than becoming a performance calculated purely for their benefit. I want to add something here about the ways this person may have already attempted indirectly to fill the gap your silence has created, because I think it is relevant to understanding the full scope of what is happening on their end. I am sensing attempts to distract themselves, perhaps through increased socializing with other people, increased focus on work or other projects, even attempts to convince themselves through conversations with friends that they are genuinely fine without this connection. None of these attempts have fully succeeded in quieting the underlying discomfort. They function more like temporary patches over something that continues to ache underneath, regardless of how much surface level distraction gets applied to it. Inhale with me for a moment, Virgo. I want to address something important about how you might be feeling during this period of silence, because I do not want this reading to focus only on their experience while ignoring yours entirely. Maintaining silence, especially with someone who once mattered significantly to you, is rarely effortless, even when it is the right choice. I am sensing there have been moments where you have questioned yourself, wondered if you are being too rigid, wondered if reaching out would simply be easier than continuing to hold this boundary. I want you to know that those moments of doubt do not invalidate the wisdom of your silence. They are simply part of what it costs to maintain something difficult but necessary. I want to speak to what might happen next, because Spirit is showing me real movement building on this person's end, even though it has not yet reached you directly. I am sensing this person is approaching a point where they will attempt to break the silence themselves, recognizing that continuing to wait for you to reach out first is not producing the result they hoped for. This attempt may come in different forms depending on your specific situation. For some of you, this will look like a direct, vulnerable message acknowledging what happened and expressing genuine desire to repair things. For others, this might look like more indirect attempts first, testing the waters through mutual connections or smaller gestures before working up to something more direct. I want to expand on these indirect attempts a bit further because I think recognizing them matters. You may notice this person becoming more visible in shared spaces whether online through likes or views on things you post, or in person through circumstances that place them near you more than usual. These indirect approaches often function as a way of testing whether any door remains open before someone risks the vulnerability of a direct approach. I do not want you to feel obligated to respond to these indirect signals if you are not ready, but I do want you to recognize them for what they are if you notice them occurring. I want you to understand that whatever form this takes, it is being driven by genuine internal pressure on their end rather than simple curiosity or boredom. The mind affecting quality mentioned in this reading's title suggests something more significant than passing discomfort. This person is genuinely struggling with the absence of resolution, and that struggle is what is going to eventually push them toward action. I want to address something important about your own discernment as this unfolds, because I think it deserves real attention here. When this person does eventually attempt to break the silence, you are not obligated to respond immediately or to abandon your boundary simply because they have finally reached their own breaking point. Your silence served a genuine purpose, whether that was protecting your own peace, allowing yourself space to heal, or simply refusing to continue a dynamic that was not serving you. The fact that your silence has affected them does not automatically mean you owe them immediate accessibility the moment they decide they are ready to engage again. I want you to trust your own timing here, separate from whatever urgency they may bring once they do reach out. You are allowed to take whatever time you genuinely need before deciding how or whether to respond. Let me speak to what genuine repair might require here, if that is something you are open to considering. If this person does reach out with real acknowledgement of what caused the original distance, real understanding of why your silence became necessary, and real demonstration of willingness to behave differently going forward, that combination carries far more weight than simple discomfort with missing your presence. I want you to watch for this distinction carefully. Someone reaching out because they miss the convenience of your availability is different from someone reaching out because they have genuinely reflected on their own behavior and want to address it honestly. I want to give you some practical markers to watch for here, because I think specificity helps more than vague reassurance. Genuine acknowledgement tends to be detailed rather than general. It names specific behaviors or moments rather than offering a blanket, somewhat empty apology that could apply to almost any situation. Genuine reflection also tends to include some discomfort on their part, a willingness to sit with the fact that their actions caused real pain rather than rushing past that discomfort to get to the part where they ask for things to return to normal. If what arrives feels rushed, if it seems more focused on alleviating their own discomfort than on genuinely understanding yours, that is worth noticing and weighing carefully before you decide how much access to give back. I also want to address what it might look like if their approach falls short of this standard, because I think this deserves honest treatment rather than being skipped over entirely. If what arrives feels more like an attempt to simply restore the previous dynamic without any real change or accountability, you are fully within your rights to maintain whatever distance still feels necessary, or to require more from them before considering full reconnection. Your silence was meaningful. It should not be abandoned cheaply, even when the person on the other end is finally genuinely struggling with its effects. I want to speak to something about your own growth during this period of silence. Separate entirely from whatever this person eventually does. This time, this quiet has likely been doing something significant for you as well, even if that was not your primary intention. Silence creates space, and space often allows for clarity that constant engagement and explanation does not permit. I am sensing that you have gained genuine insight during this period, insight about what you actually need from connection, about what you will and will not continue accepting, about your own worth separate from this person's validation or attention. I want to go further into this idea because I think it deserves real attention rather than being treated as a brief afterthought. When you stop directing energy outward toward managing someone else's feelings, explaining yourself, or trying to keep a connection comfortable for both parties, that energy does not simply disappear. It tends to redirect inward toward your own healing, your own priorities, your own sense of self that may have become slightly blurred while you were focused on maintaining this particular dynamic. I am sensing that you have used this period, consciously or not, to reconnect with parts of yourself that may have taken a back seat while this relationship was consuming more of your attention than it should have. I also want to acknowledge that this growth has likely come with its own discomfort, separate from any guilt or doubt about the silence itself. Genuine self-reflection often surfaces uncomfortable truths alongside the clarity it provides. You may have recognized patterns in yourself, ways you may have overextended or overgiven in this connection, that are worth examining honestly rather than simply attributing the entire situation to the other person's behavior. This kind of honest self-examination, while not always comfortable, tends to produce the most lasting and meaningful growth. As I bring this reading toward its close, I want to leave you with the complete picture of everything that came through today. Your silence has been significantly more powerful than you may have realized, Virgo. It has disrupted this person's expectations, forced genuine internal reflection, and is currently affecting their mind in ways that are pushing them toward eventual action. This was never about manipulation on your part. It emerged from genuine self-respect and genuine need for space, and its effect on them is simply a natural consequence of that authenticity. When they do eventually reach out, trust your own discernment about how and whether to respond, rather than feeling obligated to immediately abandon the boundary that has served you so well during this period. Hold on to the clarity you have gained during this quiet season, regardless of what they ultimately decide to do or how they decide to approach you. That clarity belongs to you permanently now, independent of whatever happens next in this particular connection. If this reading resonated with you today, please share it with a Virgo who might be holding their own silence right now and needs reassurance that it matters. And let me know in the comments if this connects to a specific situation you have been navigating. I read every comment and I carry your stories with genuine care long after this video ends. Until next time, Virgo, your silence was never empty. It has been speaking louder than words ever could, and it continues to speak even now in this very moment as this reading reaches you.